What we need now is not only to look back and to conduct a thorough assessment of the system's failures and the mistakes we made, but more importantly, to look forward and to mobilize all people with one mission in mind: to rebuild trust.
Actually, the reason I like the discussions at Davos is they do start with talk, with dialogue, with introductions, but over time, and sometimes that's in between annual sessions, but sometimes it's very quickly that action comes from that talk and action comes from that discussion. And we are getting more traction, I think, this year in 2009 in Davos about how quick we can take some actions because, of course, the financial crisis has allowed us all to reprioritize, refocus.
Bringing people together in a format that does not create hierarchy but actually removes hierarchy. It is critical for people with ideas to meet people with power and vice versa.
Part of the point is to talk through the underlying issues and a range, in a brainstorming sense, to have a degree of freedom, if you will, to express a range of ideas, test them out against a variety of stakeholders, not just your own immediate peers.
It's very important that people like me from civil society are here to remind the business people and government leaders of not to forget the poor and vulnerable who will face the worst brunt of the financial crisis.
To my mind, the real answer to where are we now is that we don't know. It does make it difficult to rebuild confidence. We are not in the same place as we were in the autumn. In the autumn, the banking system in the West was at threat of systemic collapse. Because of the very decisive actions taken by regulators, policymakers, central banks around the world, that danger was averted.
We're facing two major risks. One is social unrest, and second, protectionism risk that is clearly enhanced by having to engage national taxpayers' money.
The worst thing that can happen is that we start questioning the notion of capitalism, because capitalism is good, capitalism powers countries, capitalism is what unleashes innovation.
This global crisis is going to change us. It's going to change the way that we think about ourselves, that we think about the world. It's going to change the way that we do things. It's going to change the way that we work, the way that we relate to each other. More importantly, it's going to change the way that we make decisions and the way that we exercise our leadership responsibility as a global community.
No amount of rules are going to enforce good behavior. No amount of rules is going to get that value system right within the system, and that is essential to sustainable, flourishing capital markets.
One of the really important things is to build organic global institutions that enable people who are trying to make a difference across the world to talk to each other and understand what needs to get done.
We should also try to introduce everywhere, if I may, in the system much more transparency. Transparency for financial instruments, transparency for markets, and much more transparency for institutions themselves.
We live here with 6 billion people, and those three things, energy, climate and food, need to be addressed.
Maybe we should also engage ministers of finance to ensure that we all realize that there is actually no contradiction between an ambitious climate policy and our endeavors to overcome the financial crisis.
Yes, it is true that in an economic crisis, people may put the environment lower down the agenda. Why not actually use the economic crisis and the fiscal stimulus and the investment to invest actually in the energies of the future so that when the economy comes back up again, we don't go back to dependence on $100 a barrel oil.
We're optimistic, we're confident, and we believe that we'll be able to supply the energy that's needed when economies around the world bounce back, when the capital markets become functional again. We will be there because we're making the investments during this downturn so that we will be.
I do think that there's going to be a new order, and a new order needs to have an element of global economy managed by a global entity. How do we construct that? Well, there's a lot of work to do, but I think it's in our common interests to do so.
This crisis can be an incentive for an even better world as we go forward. New products and new initiatives and a better way of dealing with some of the challenges that we face.
This is the time to do it. The time for words is over. It's time for action and implementation. This is the time for us to see courageous leadership on the part of the G20 leaders.
And that was very interesting to see, to exchange ideas on how everyone in different regions is encountering nearly the same problem with a slightly different solution.
I think Davos is a magnificent opportunity for people to get together and have conversations that can't happen anyplace else in the world. It has an atmosphere that's informal, that is focused, and that brings together people at a level where people often don't get together.
Reason will prevail and will come up with a better system that understands both the complexities and the challenges of dealing with global issues in a global context. And I think that's a very important function that the World Economic Forum can play.
The purpose of the World Economic Forum is not to take decisions, but to act as a force for reflection and connection, connecting ideas, proposals, stakeholders, countries, and cultures.